So, hello everybody. Welcome to this very first edition of the AI Frontrunners in News podcast series. And very happy today we're joined by Ezra. Ezra Eeman is a leading voice at the intersection of media, technology and innovation. Ezra is a strategy and innovation director at NPO, the Dutch public broadcaster, and he also leads the WAN-IFRA's Global AI in Media initiative. Many of you will know him from his Wayfinder trend briefings, where he maps how AI and emerging tech are reshaping the news ecosystem. He's been helping newsrooms worldwide think beyond tools towards new models of journalism, trust, and audience connection. Ezra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danny. Great to be here.
Yes. So how was your summer, Ezra?
It was very relaxed. I really switched off all my digital gear. And we did a trip with the family on the west coast of America, from Seattle to San Francisco. So I did pass the valley, but I didn't go to any of the AI companies.
No close follow, but I presume that you have been following afterwards because there have been, again, a flood of AI-related announcements, new models, funding rounds, strategic moves almost every week. It doesn't stop in this space. If you look back at the past 2 months, what are kind of the most significant announcements or moves that you have noted and that will have an impact on the future industry?
Yeah, it was a quite busy summer of AI updates. And I would say, for me, the biggest announcement was actually the kind of big reveal that wasn't a big reveal, like the launch of GPT-5, and everybody was expecting a lot of that. And if you look close, it is a significant step up in terms of memory, reasoning, agentic capabilities, but it also confused users quite a lot. The internal routing that chooses the models wasn't very clear. So people had the impression they were actually dumbing down the model. They were feeling that they lost something, like the personality change. And so the fact that the newest models are not any more surprising us or meeting our expectations, that we even feel that we're losing against something, is significant in the fact that we're not improving as fast as we think, but also we're getting used to them. We're getting used to having ChatGPT in our life. And if suddenly it changes, we're getting a little bit anxious that we're losing something there. So that's also
something that the news industry knows. Habits are being formed, people are being, and then you do a change. And you get a lot of troubles, kind of people adapt.
The signal is less improvement, less speed than we might expect, but habit formation. So people are getting anxious if you take the ChatGPT away. I think the more consequential announcement was earlier in the summer, where Cloudflare actually announced that they would have this managed robot TXT service, where they would block crawlers from AI companies by default. And given their size and the sheer volume of a number of websites where they can impose this, this is a very meaningful and powerful strategies against the idea that content is for free. And I'm not sure that this will lead eventually to the best possible solution for publishers, but it changes the power dynamics, and I think that's an interesting one.
Impressive move, and their CEO, Matthew Prince, is very pronounced about the kind of trying to get the balance right between crawling, using that content in AI answers. What's your view actually about that kind of balance between the tech giants building these massive chat bots where people engage with content and then, the role of content providers? Where are we today in that kind of cycle?
Well, I think there, as always, it's a market place. It's supply and demand, and currently there is a lot of supply. There's content, but it's being taken, and there's not so much actual demand from the AI companies to pay for that supply. So there is an imbalance in the valuation of what's the role of that content in the ecosystem? How important is it? How much value do we assign to it? And how do we price it into the models? Because in the end, somehow you have to pay for it.
Seems to be still that publishers, definitely news publishers, that are creating quite a lot of new content that is not yet stored somewhere, right? Not in Wikipedia, is quite valuable, because we have seen the likes of the OpenAIs and the Perplexities making deals with a number of news outlets. Is that a reliable business model for news companies making content deals with these companies, or what is your general advice if news publishers come to see you?
Well, I'm actually. It's a very good question. It's $1 million question. I have spent the whole summer thinking about what is actually the economic model that could work for publishers. And so far, I've seen quite a few hypothetical models that could work, that are pitched by companies. Like there's this paper crawl or the crawl text that is being floated. But if you know that ChatGPT is processing 1 billion queries a day, what's the price point for a crawl? At what point does this work economically? Like even at a micro fee, it would mean billions per year that would need to be paid out. If you know how the queries work and that every query has sub-queries and paper crawl would very quickly become very expensive. And if AI models would be forced, they would either cut back free access because it's not sustainable to keep it free. They would aggressively raise the subscription fees for these models because they would find ways to get their free content anyway. In different ways.
That they don't hesitate to doing so. And
Yeah,
there's a lot
and
of
so
evidence.
that's the paper crawl one, which I don't see how it could work. Then you have the attribution game where Proratas and others are trying to define a revenue splits in terms of how much your content is allocated. But again, currently very much a niche product where the supply and demand game
is not
they're supplying this as a product, but there's none of the AI companies actually taking it, which is a signal in itself. And if you would do it, again, you will split up kind of microscopic amounts because every query might have tens or even hundreds of sources that are feeding into it. How do you make that work? And do you trust one party to define the attribution mechanism? Or will there be different attribution mechanisms depending on the platform? Would you trust Google to determine which part you get from the pie? Who's deciding this?
It's actually a very interesting point. I recently listened to another podcast with the senior vice president of product and search at Google. And the key question is, will the web survive eventually? If the whole world moves to AI overviews, AI mode answer engines, and to what degree is the sustainable existence of content providers still relevant for those parties? And what he told there is that he says, for us, the continued sustainable survival of content providers is absolutely key to provide good experiences. And they are also, and I don't know if you're aware of that, or if any experiments already know, they're already discussing with quite a number of content providers to say in those overviews that are attributed to find kind of joint business models in there. Because they are pretty much convinced that if they don't find that model, content providers will not have an incentive to create content anymore over time. And as a result, their own models will kind of also not thrive. So I don't know if you have any perspective and if Google is going to define that.
I think you're completely right. But then you also have to have the discussion, how do they define content providers? And I'm quite sure they don't have the same lens to the industry as we have. The fact that they're looking at creators, the fact that they're looking at micro-publishing, much smaller operations, they're not
YouTube
trying
movie,
to save the whole news industry with huge newsrooms the way they're set up. And
absolutely, and not only that content providers, as every YouTube that is video that is published is a piece of content for them. And so it's a very broad perspective. But the interesting perspective is that if they want to be as relevant in human life as they are today for many people, they are firmly convinced that they will need a lot of content still being created by humans in a fresh way to be staying relevant and finding models.
I completely agree, but they have an infinite human supply for the moment. So there is no...
then the question is, what is the role? Yeah.
And so the question is more if you want to sustain quality journalism that's also tied to a way of operating and journalistic charters and like checks and balances and editors and sub-editors and do they also want to maintain that? And I think
that is another question.
that's
That
another
is another
question, and it's
question.
a much more costly. I think fundamentally the business of news has never completely worked. It was always subsidized by something else, by advertising, by subscriptions or anything else, and it's even more clear in this ecosystem. It's not sustainable on itself.
Another model is the Spotify model. You recently on your LinkedIn published Comet Plus Perplexities Initiative. Does it make any chance to pick up?
Well, again, the Spotify model isn't a great model, but it is a model that artists live by. In the end, you sign away your rights for your content for quite an unclear revenue. And the biggest difference is, of course, that songs are played many times over time. So while an article is read once. And so if everybody is part of the Spotify model, how many times are you actually surfaced and read, and what's the revenue that's against that?
So the lifetime value of an article.
In theory, they work. Once you scale them across the whole industry, they start to fall a bit apart, I feel.
Hello there. I'd like to take a short moment out of our conversation with Ezra to invite you all to our Twipe Digital Growth Summit on October 14th in Stuttgart. It's where the sharpest minds in the news industry will come together to shape the future of journalism in the age of AI. You can find all details and register via our website, twipemobile.com. And now, back to our conversation. Are you inherently, in between the lines, Ezra, a bit skeptical, even pessimistic about the survival of the news industry in this AI-dominated world? How do you look at that?
Well, I'm actually positive and optimistic, but not for the entire industry. I think really strong brands and big brands, they will survive because they will always stay direct destinations because the kind of trust and authority that drives people to these brands, they can maintain. I think there will be a strong new field of smart, smaller operations that are either working as providers in these ecosystems or have a niche that they can protect very well. I think everything in between, which was kind of subsidized by advertising and was too big to work in a similar way in the future, they will struggle. So I think there will be a thinning out of the news industry, and perhaps that commodity layer of news has to become thinner. Like, how many articles about the new Pope can you have from exactly the same perspective?
And what is your perspective? Because you can look at the human part of journalism. If you focus a little bit about not only the business model now, but more on is there still value for news outlets to very much not participate in AI-generated content and very much focus on the human part of the equation, not only the reporting as it happens, but also the interpretation, the opinions behind, putting reporters quite core and front in the game? Is that a valuable strategy, and can it be strong enough and differentiating enough versus what the AI chatbots can bring as experiences in the future?
I do think that, as you mentioned in the beginning, these systems need data to actually provide the answers, and that means that humans somehow have to kind of define the right questions in advance. And and it's about some fields where who's holding power to account. I don't think AI systems will do that. Who has really that kind of human judgment on situations and how to bring a story or an angle? Who has that very specific tone of voice or personality that you're connecting with, which isn't an AI that kind of mimics it? Where's the live expertise, boots on the ground, to report what's happening. Like if there is a fire in a forest, like if you're not on the ground, you cannot report it the same way as a bot that describes it. So there's, so I think a number of positions, a number of things where and I would say that the most important is the choices that we make. Like, with which intention do you make a story? Why do you make that story?
All right.
That will still be important, but that means you have to be distinctive in these choices.
Yes. Yeah. That's of course. Yes, because you also mentioned that you also expect in niche areas more and more, let's say, good content creators using Substack or other platforms flourish in that new world, also finding their ways in that kind of new world, reducing thereby the need of a professional news organization, which actually encapsulates a number of these professional content providers. Do you think that is also going to be a sustainable trend?
I think that that's something that's already happening, but these creators, which are now individual creators who kind of feed into platforms, will become more and more kind of nano businesses, small businesses that can run an entire virtual newsroom assisted by agentic flows and maybe doing that in a networked way. So I think I'm really optimistic about these new kind of forms of smaller groups or clusters or even one-man newsrooms that operate. Do they completely replace like a newsroom like the BBC, who can connect the dots across different dimensions and different countries? No, they don't.
No, that will be difficult. There will be a very specific niche.
We'll still need that expertise across domains, but I believe very much you will have big, bold, trusted clusters in the middle and a huge band of creators on the fringe, and then in the middle, that's where the big question mark is.
So you don't have to be afraid, or you shouldn't be stuck in the middle as a content news organization and make some choices. Either
extra large or extra small, but medium is not working.
Medium will not be worthwhile going after. Now, you also are kind of leading this WAN-IFRA's AI initiative. How important is it that, from your point of view, publishers join forces? Because if you have to fight against the OpenAIs, the Anthropics that just raised billions of dollars in matters of months, right? How do you, as an industry, and what sort of initiative could you imagine that comes out of that?
Well, what I think is really valuable is on 3 layers, and that's also what we're trying to do at WAN-IFRA. It's first of all building that knowledge and understanding. This is a fast-moving environment. How are even the question, how are AI overviews impacting search? I've seen a dozen of
interpretation, statistics, whatever.
And every time they're a bit different, and they can even contradict each other very much. What's the single point of truth where you have to look at to kind of define your own strategy? I think having that common knowledge and sharing a bit more the questions that we collectively have to pose is one thing that you can do as an industry together. Secondly, is very much that dialogue with the platforms. They thrive if we each approach them individually.
So a bit more bargaining power in that game,
a bit what Cloudflare did. But if you have a few of these positions where you say these are some of the things that we want you to ask permission before you use our content. That's an industry perspective that we collectively ask. Yeah. We want that there are mechanisms for attribution, and we want that there are mechanisms to figure out misinformation and trusts in these ecosystems. These are broad demands that you can really ask collectively, and they only work if you ask them collectively, I think. And then finally, it's about defining solutions together. Could we define together an attribution model that really works for us? Could we define trust signals that we think should feed into the AI models. That's something that you also have to do collectively. They're harder, I must say, but I do think it's
Did
valuable
you
to have.
see some early evidence of that, the last thing happening, this kind of more
Well,
very specific
I think the
collaboration?
C2PA initiative, like the content provenance initiative for images, is one that was very long in the making, but now finally gets some adoption across
Okay,
bigger platforms. Google adopting it, Adobe adopting it,
okay.
becoming standard in photo. How say
Yeah, yeah,
fototoestellen,
yeah, 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 yeah.
cameras, yeah,
Cameras, in
in
cameras.
cameras.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So some of these standards that you develop in as an industry could play a role. I think a checklist of trust criteria that are machine readable could be really interesting.
Absolutely.
And then it's up to yourself how much of the boxes you tick, but at least it could
Yeah.
play a role in how your surface.
Promoting that, getting that, creating the awareness, having the people understand the kind of the sources behind, because of course people in the future will not know whether a video is AI generated or genuine. If it's even, I think recently there was a case that one picture from Palestine was actually picked up by many news outlets, and they all have to kind of excuse themselves.
Mm.
It was a manipulated image eventually. So there is definitely a need as well for that trust kind of trust-based collaboration.
So, and maybe on that point, if you were saying like which part will become more needed and more necessary from the human side, is the side where you actually do the trust building and the verification and the fact checking and
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
finding the signals in the noise.
Yeah, and trying and the real question there, in my opinion, is how can you credibly differentiate that in your communication and making people informed, aware that there's the authentic, more human verified, human created content that has value versus the, of course, very smart personal assistant that kind of intrigues you and helps you in many other topics in your life. Right?
Yeah.
That kind of positioning will be key in the future, and I think companies can help each other, I guess, as well to differentiate that, to say
Yeah.
we're not like that.
And that's where I do think that brands matter more than ever, because going to a brand, because I know it's like, why do I go to the local bakery? Because I know they just have better croissants
Sure.
than the supermarket, which has everything, and I
Yeah,
still
yeah,
go there. And we all thought that at some point they would disappear, and you see them flourish more than ever. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Branding, marketing, clear understanding, mass communication is an absolutely critical skill. An important thing that happened the past 2 weeks is this famous MIT report. I understood that you couldn't get your hands on it, but it has
I received this. At the power of the network.
the power of that. You have it now, so you have some more insight. But eventually, it influenced stock markets because basically, it, as far as I could understand it, it kind of took a broad survey and then illustrated that more than 95% of enterprise-related experiments with AI improvements basically don't get to the results that people aim at. Is this the start of the end of, let's say, AI-based innovation?
No, I must say I'm highly skeptical about that report itself, but also the way it's been reported. Again, it becomes a high headline and 95%. For now, that's why I first wanted to read it. Like, if you look then at the methodology, it was 53 people that they interviewed, and a quite light survey with 150 companies, and then you do a broad announcement across all industries, all domains about every aspect of AI.
But how come that a reputed institution like MIT then kind of puts its stamp on it if it's that lightweight kind of report? Because it has
But
been
if you read
branded
the report
MIT.
itself, it is nuanced, and they do kind of flag all of these things that I say, like big caveat about the results and whatever. But that's really what's wrong with news media nowadays. They just read that first headline, amplify it, and then it being
And they
picked
have
up by
impact.
the stock market as if. And I do think that because we did a survey with WAN-IFRA and the percentage of successful cases that really returned on investment in terms of revenue was 9%, so not much higher.
Yeah. It's probably still early phases. If you would draw back the clock and we go back to 1999 and the internet is just about to exist and you would look at all the experiments happening at that time, probably most of them would be failures as well. But if you then
but
look
and I'm saying specifically about revenue, because if we looked at productivity, if we looked at efficiency, if we looked at creating extra value or any other metrics, a soft or harder metric, then the results were already better. They saw people were actually being more productive or could generate efficiencies in their workflows. That didn't always end up in like saving so much money or getting extra revenue. That's a different metric.
Interesting. Good to see. We're about to end the pot, and I just have 2-3 questions with a rapid answer. There's a lot of discussion about AGI. When will we have it?
I have no idea, but I honestly find it completely irrelevant because I see no signs whatsoever, not even remotely, in the current models and the current papers of anything that's cognizance. I see incredible pattern matching, but nothing close to AGI.
Do you then like super intelligence more than general intelligence, or is it also just buzzwords that are being launched by these AI giants?
I think we see narrow super intelligence, but AGI is completely different. That's a broad term for a much broader phenomenon.
Other quick questions. Big geopolitical topic. Who's going to win the AI race, the US or China?
I find it very hard to completely assess the Chinese landscape. I think they're clearly an incredible force. I do miss a bit the originality and the sense of entrepreneurship, like coming with bold ideas and marketing and bringing them. I feel they're playing in a very specific field, and they're very strong, and they will certainly win in that field. I'm not sure if they will dominate.
Okay, all right. Maybe last question. What role should Europe play? Is there a role for Europe in that game? And do you see something happening in Europe that you say, we have seen the Mistrals, we have seen some initiative in Germany, but is there anything of material substance happening in Europe?
Yeah, I would love to say that we can be a counter force. I do think that we can be that quality grocery in the world, and if you and that specific brand that you trust, and that can be worth quite a lot in the end.
All right, good. Ezra, thank you for sharing these insights and also helping us seeing beyond these headlines, the AI headlines, and also to try to understand what really matters in this. We received again lots of food for thought for the days to come. For those of you listening, if you'd like to dive even deeper in these topics with Ezra or other industry leaders, we organize from Twipe's point of view the Growth Summit, Twipe's Digital Growth Summit on October 14th in Stuttgart. Many of sharpest minds in this industry on AI, we come together and we explore how this new technology will impact the future of news. Ezra, thanks again for being with us today. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you in Stuttgart.